Dulles Airport, just outside of Washington, D.C.
United 1494 Dulles Tower, 126 with 6, runway 1 left, clear to land.
Code 608, plan on minimum time on the runway, traffic's close and code.
It has been called the most stressful job in the world. One mistake by an air traffic controller, one moment of forgetfulness, one slip of the tongue can mean disaster.
United 1020 Dulles Tower, 12704, runway 1 left, clear to land.
Yet most controllers can't imagine doing anything else.
Every day at work is never the same day twice, based on volume, the complexity, the weather. People are always going to run late and early and everything else. You're on the edge of your seat, and it's never the same day twice. We're 705-129-09er, runway 30.
There are about 15,000 air traffic controllers in the United States. Every day, they handle over 55,000 commercial flights, guiding them through crisscrossing highways in the sky.
It's not just one airplane on that route. They're opposite direction, they're crossing, they're converging, they're diverging, they're doing everything.
Imagine a puzzle, and then putting another puzzle on top of that, and a third one on top of that, and having to memorize all three of these puzzles, and each different piece of the puzzle is another controller's sector of airspace. So not only are you separating airplanes from airplanes, but you're separating them from other puzzle pieces.
Today, over 200,000 private and commercial aircraft operate around the globe. Every day, they carry 4 million people from one airport to another. Dulles controllers can handle about one takeoff or landing every minute. But that's not enough to meet the soaring demand.
Basically, it's just constant pressure. As he touches down, there's a company Boeing 737. It's just right behind him. Once he clears, the next one will be touching down on that runway.
Air traffic controllers know how much is at stake with every decision they make, but they don't dwell on it.
Citation 241 Alpha Dulles ground, turn left on Zulu.
You really don't have time to sit there and think about each individual airplane and how this is going to affect all the lives of those people. You're thinking about aircraft characteristics. You're thinking about call signs. You're thinking about in-trail. You're thinking about separation.
I think the bottom line is we know what's at stake. I mean, we know the ramifications of what we do and what we say, and we know there's people up there.
You just don't overanalyze it while you're in the middle of it. You're not thinking,
yeah.
oh, well, this is just a video game. But you're not sitting there thinking, okay, this is 747, it holds 240 people, this is a DC-9, it might have 120. You don't overanalyze it. But for the most part, the emotions aren't involved until the moment something goes wrong. And then all of a sudden, when your stomach's in your throat, and your shoulders are all tense, that's when you really know it's real.
It was about 70 years ago that airplanes first started to carry passengers. By the end of the 1920s, you could take an airplane to most American cities, but only during daylight hours when pilots could see where they were. Then, radio entered the cockpit. Once pilots could talk to people on the ground, it was possible to track an airplane's position as it moved across the country.
Are you on time? Flying exactly on schedule.
By the early 1930s, airlines were competing with trains for passengers. A plane could get you from coast to coast in 36 relaxing hours. There was more and more air traffic, but not much in the way of control. Airplanes flew pretty much where pilots wanted to take them. But in June of 1956, everything changed.
Awesome Grand Canyon in Arizona is the scene of the worst commercial air crash in history. Other planes search vainly for survivors after two big airliners collided and plunged to destruction with 128 men, women, and children.
The collision over the Grand Canyon shocked the federal government into action. In 1958, Congress created the Federal Aviation Administration, which promptly hired 1,500 new controllers to to oversee the new, tougher rules. Now, instead of flying the most direct routes, airplanes had to fly from one radar beacon to the next in a zigzag pattern of jetways that was less efficient, but safer.
357 reverse high-speed taxiway is approved on the 85. Contact ground. Local control is the person who keeps the runway hot. US Air 2641, wind 290. Your objective is to get as many aircraft on the runway, either landing and departing, and keeping the runway occupied.
When the airplane takes off and he gets a mile and a half or so off the departure end of the runway, you're not going to be able to see him out the windows anymore. That's when they transfer the responsibility to our radar controllers that are on the floor below the tower in the very cold, dark room.
Contact departure.
This is Terminal Radar Control, or TRACON.
Radar service terminus, contact NASA tower.
TRACON controllers handle aircraft on their way to or from airports in the most congested and dangerous airspace.
What they're doing here is they're taking the flight progress strips, which tells you the information on the airplanes, and delivering them, placing them in the appropriate sector here for each radar controller. Basically, the room is broken up into departures and arrivals. If you look, this gentleman here is working all the south arrivals.
608 descent via the Baron FMS.
He has airplanes that get delivered to him at 8,000 feet and 11,000 feet.
1695 Dulles approach, good evening. US Air 2235, turn left.
His objective is to keep the constant pressure on the runway, make sure no gaps ahead, and get as many arrivals down as you can.
You'll have an airplane at 7,000, an airplane at 8,000, an airplane at 9,000, an airplane at 10,000, basically all coming together.
This can be the most dangerous part of any flight. The few minutes just after takeoff or right before landing, when an airplane is under TRACON control. It is here, in the heavily trafficked area around an airport, that a mid-air collision is most likely to happen. 6 years ago, Colleen Spring experienced every controller's nightmare. The loss of separation between aircraft they call a deal.
I was working the TRACON final position, and the weather was instrument flight rules, meaning you could not see outside of the cockpit. So none of the aircraft could see each other. And it was as busy as I have ever seen it in the 15 years I've been a controller.
Delta flight heading 190, descend and maintain 2,000. Expedite traffic is 3 o'clock and 3 miles turning east.
The lower aircraft that I had was a DC-9, and the higher aircraft was a Jetstream, which is a prop. The DC-9 was being vectored away from the final for resequencing because his approach wasn't working. So I climbed the DC-9 to 4,000 feet. The Jetstream was already at 4. When I realized that they were going to converge at 4,000, I asked the DC-9 to go back down to 3, and I asked the Jetstream to go to 5 and tried to turn them both.
Northwest 624, I'm going to take you through the localizer for spacing. Northwest 624, turn right heading 190, descend and maintain 3,000 immediate. 204, that traffic is at the same altitude. Climb immediately to 5,000. The traffic is a DC-9er under you, and it was a climb for you.
So then they merged together, and at that moment I held my breath because it's the closest I've ever had two airplanes get together. And you see the targets come together, and you just hold your breath, waiting to see if they're going to come out the other side.
Traffic, no factor, fly heading 090, maintain 5,000.
And when they came out the other side, big sigh, okay guys, here we go. We still have a lot to do. There's still 16 airplanes on the frequency that I've got to get on the ground, you know, whilst trying to recover emotionally. There were tears coming down my face, and it was a good 20 minutes before they could get me a break because they didn't have anyone to get me off the position.
Approach, contact tower.
I took the next week off work, had a few bad dreams about it, and ran a very conservative operation probably for the next year. Second-guessing myself a lot. When I had situations where airplanes were cleared to altitudes below other airplanes, I would still look at it over and over again, reiterate it to the pilots. You're definitely going to 4, and you're definitely stopped at 5. I would question them, I would question myself. So it took a year before I kind of got over the experience.